welcome to Seasons of Justice from the West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative. I'm Kevin Thompson, and today we're marking South Asian Heritage Month 2026, whose theme is Unity in Diversity. In this conversation, we'll be exploring what the theme asks of the Church, how it connects with the Church of England's journey from lament to action, and what progress, challenge, and hope look like here in Coventry. But before we dive into today's podcast, let me introduce our guest. Neil Masih is the Diocese of Coventry Intercultural Mission Enabler, ICME. His role is focused on promoting and embedding racial justice, following the From Lament to Action report in 2021. There is a focus on raising awareness, working with clergy and laity to listen to the concerns in parishes and to share the joys of culturally diverse churches. He is passionate about delivering training, talks, and listening to people to ensure that all are welcome in and feel enabled to participate in the life of the Church. Neil is looking forward to the South Asian Heritage Month Christian celebration that is taking place at Coventry Cathedral on Saturday the 25th of July from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and all are welcome. Neil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm delighted to join you today. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So just to set the scene, South Asian Heritage Month this year invites us to think about unity in diversity. Not sameness, but a shared life where difference is valued and allowed to shape the whole community. And the From Lament to Action report also challenged the Church to move from racial justice, from aspiration, into participation and governance. So I wanted to ask, looking at clergy appointments and diocesan committees, where is South Asian heritage and leadership already shaping Coventry's life? And where could one practical adjustment be made in terms of participation to make it more genuinely equal?
Well, I think one thing they're doing in Coventry is recognising the contribution of the South Asian community within our churches. We embedded on a mapping exercise 12 months ago where we identified diverse parishes and looked to support those in terms of racial justice. It is a cautionary note, though, just because a parish is diverse doesn't always mean that a church is going to be diverse as well.
Yes.
People of other faiths or no faiths could be living in those communities as well. But one thing I've focused on is working with those churches and listening to the voices of individuals and leaders, including clergy leaders, to ensure that people have a voice from various ethnic communities, including the South Asian communities as well. So we're keen to support those churches in terms of making sure that there's more opportunities for leadership to participate, to be aware of racial justice campaigns that we're running as a diocese as well, and to ensure that people feel part of our Christian faith.
Okay, thanks, Neil. And one of the clearest shifts after From Lament to Action was the call for dioceses to take racial justice seriously enough to measure it, including gathering and publishing ethnicity data. And that matters because what is not measured can easily remain invisible. So my next question is, what story is the latest Coventry data telling about South Asian involvement across parishes and schools, and how might that picture guide priorities for the coming year?
Well, we've not been able to carry out the diversity data overall as a diocese. What we have done with the West Midlands Racial Justice team is to offer that diversity survey very recently during our diocesan synod meeting. And what we're hoping to do is to roll that out eventually across the diocese so that we can actually get a clearer picture of how diversity lies within the diocese, and also to support the relevant support that we need to in terms of the support that we could give to given communities. What we have done, though, is we've got urban church plans and we've done annual diversity data with those in terms of looking at how the land lies within those particular 4 urban plans. And what we have found is that there is an increase in the South Asian community within those churches. And we're looking at ways in which we could support those communities as well. One thing that we are aware of is that Coventry is a very diverse part of our collaborative West Midlands team. And we're keen to highlight that and also ensure that people have access to training, race awareness campaigns, and to have a voice. For myself, when I'm delivering training or offering opportunities for people to participate, I'm very keen to hear a number of voices in what we're doing throughout the year, not only just during South Asian History Month, but also throughout the year in terms of what we're trying to deliver, so that we can get an insight into the lived experience of people. We've done that in the past, certainly during race awareness campaigns, where people have been able to talk about their lived experience and also to share those stories as well. In fact, during our South Asian History Month celebratory event, we're going to have a number of people telling their stories of how they came to faith and also their experiences within the diocese and beyond in terms of their commitment to the Christian faith. And for me, that's very important. I think for anyone looking to participate in church life, if people could see or hear people like themselves, it also encourages people to actually think, well, maybe that's something I can pursue or look at other opportunities within our church. People need to have a voice and also be given the opportunity to have that voice as well. And one thing just further on this, whilst reflecting on participation within the church, I think one thing that came out of COVID was the idea that people could share worship in different languages. And one key feature that came out then was the opportunity for people to say the Lord's Prayer in whatever given language that they're most familiar with. And I'm delighted to actually see that carrying on as I go to different churches and to participate in worship, that when it comes to that part of the service, people are encouraged to say the Lord's Prayer in whatever language is suited to them as well.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. Regarding liturgy, preaching, music and formation, how that shapes the church's imagination. And I just wanted to ask, around if South Asian Christians' experience is only celebrated once a year, the church misses a deeper opportunity to learn from its theology, languages, history and patterns of discipleship. So can I just ask, how are training programs and worship resources in Coventry drawing on South Asian perspectives to deepen discipleship for the whole diocese?
One of the things that we've looked at is an app called Breeze Translate, and that is available to people in church settings, whereby the spoken word can be translated onto a phone, and you pick the language you choose for the translation to occur in, and then people can actually follow the spoken word. It can't actually translate hymns. I think it's probably too fast for it to be able to cope with that. But certainly the spoken word is offered and translated into a number of languages that people can use to actually hear what's being preached or raised to in a worship service. So that's a resource that is available, and there's various opportunities for churches within our diocese and beyond to access that information as well. One thing that I'm familiar with is a number of resources that are available through the Anglican network of intercultural churches. And they've got an intercultural hub at St. Paul's Slough, which people can access online to look at resources to support intercultural worship as well. And that's including everybody in their worship to support them in understanding and learning from different languages. I think it's a great opportunity for us to look at those resources and to build on them so everyone feels included during a service. It can often be the case where people where English isn't their first language may well attend worship services, but may not fully understand what's being said. And that's not always beneficial to people whose language isn't English. So what we need to do is look at resources. Breeze Translate is a starting point, but I'm aware of colleagues in similar roles to myself who have got access to resources whereby they might use a hymn that we're quite familiar with, but parts of it can be interpreted into a different language for people to sing it, not only in English, but also in a different language as well. There are other resources available on familiar platforms whereby you can sing psalms in different languages, for instance, in Urdu or in Punjabi, but we'll have the translated version on those in English as well, so people can follow and understand what's being said in those hymns as well. it would be useful if we could roll that out, not only just at key dates within the Christian calendar, but on a regular basis as well. Just another thing I would like to add is that I'm familiar with one church in particular in Coventry that invites a cultural approach of worship in the summer, where people from different church backgrounds meet together to worship God outside. And there's music and there's testimonies from a range of people from Asian backgrounds, from Pakistani backgrounds, from Caribbean backgrounds, the Ivory Coast, who can meet and worship together. And it's a beautiful sight to actually see people having that approach. Different languages, different cultures, but united in God's love.
Okay, thank you, Neil. And I just pick up on something you mentioned. You mentioned about intercultural worship, and apart from the fact that it's good for people of different languages to understand what everybody else is saying, I wonder if you could just touch on the wider mandate about intercultural worship and why that's so important in the times that we're living in.
Yeah, very much so, Kevin. It's a valid point. I think we can be lost sometimes in thinking that worship should be of one style, whereas I'm very much of the mindset that we are a global church. Yeah. And we need to celebrate the participation and the experiences that people have based on their Christian faith. And as I mentioned, we are united in God's love, but how we get to our faith varies from people, even within a given diocese, never mind when we look at it globally. And people may have had some very tough experiences to declare their faith or to actually live their faith. It may have meant persecution in some cases. It may have meant leaving their homes and families, as a hymn often says. So I think in this day and age, we need to keep our focus that God is for everyone and he welcomes all. And it's not about your nationality or race you are. It's about being integrated in God's love and fellowship and sharing that wider to make sure that people feel very much part of God's kingdom. So intercultural worship, the wider picture is very much about including everyone and recognizing everyone's gifts, regardless of culture, race, and in some ways, even styles of worship.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Thank you. I want to touch on everyday parish life, and structural change is often felt through everyday parish practices. So, for example, who is greeted, who is heard, whose food, language, music, and leadership are treated as normal, and whose are treated as occasional extras. And I wanted to ask, what one everyday habit, perhaps around hospitality or language, worship or leadership style, would you encourage every parish to review this month as a step towards the vision of From Lament to Action?
I think we need to listen to each other, Kevin. I think it's very important, whether we're welcoming somebody who's familiar to the church surroundings, whether they're a first-time visitor, or whether they're bringing a friend to our church, and they might be from a South Asian background or other UKME or global majority heritage background. We need to recognise the gifts that people have got. We need to listen to where people are with their faith and make sure that we hold that mindset that we are welcoming people. Welcomers have got a very important part. I recognise that it's a busy environment. If we take the standalone Sunday service, that there's, a number of things to do. But very often they're the first point of call when people come into a church. And what we need to do is make sure that we make people feel comfortable. We understand what they may come along with certain mindsets or certain journeys that they've taken, and their relationship may not be that healthy when it comes to faith. But it's an opportunity for us really to welcome people into our fellowship and make them feel that they could be part of our movement going forward in terms of making more disciples and bringing people closer to God. So we need to be aware that we could be having anyone coming into our churches, be they refugees, be they people who've been away from the church for a long time, or be they professionals moving into our given area with all the new housing that's occurring around various parts of our diocese. And what we need to do is really make sure that people feel the warmth of God's love. And when I've been visiting churches and worship communities around the diocese, I've found that we're doing that quite well. I think we recognise that people are welcoming. They've got some experience based on where they're based in the diocese, and they need to make sure that they continue that, which I'm sure they will do.
Thank you, Neil. I want to touch on supporting young voices. Many young South Asian Christians live at the intersection of faith, family, culture, migration history, and British identity. And their insight is not just useful for youth work, it can also help the wider church understand belonging, vocation, and leadership differently. So my next question is, how can the diocese create space for young South Asian Christians to shape policy and decision-making, and not just youth programs over the next academic year?
What I'm looking to do, Kevin, at the moment is to put together a race equality advisory group. Mm-hmm. And we're just putting together some terms of reference for that, with a vision to having that rolling out within the next 6 to 12 months. My vision for that is to have a varied number of voices of people with the lived experience, clergy and laity, people from diverse communities, diverse parishes, and also I'm thinking people who may not always have had the voice, and that includes young people. I think you're absolutely right. Young people will come along with lived experience and also some great ideas about improving racial justice from a young person's point of view, from their experience of school, college, university, and even work. And what we need to do is, again, going back to my point about listening, but also giving young people the voice to ensure that we hear what ideas they've got. And within that comes the use of technology and how we can do that in terms of resourcing ourselves and accessing resources to support racial justice. But also what young people are seeing in their communities. What are the joys, the challenges? What things do we need to put in place to support them in terms of training or youth groups or opportunities to support them really with their mindset on board? And when I've visited schools during Black History Month or Racial Justice Sunday, what I have found is where schools are running themes about racial justice, young people's ideas, along with the wonderful staff that are working with them, are really, really enhancing it. And when I was at Viewpoint School last October during Black History Month, annual event to celebrate Black History Month, and the level of detail and the dance and the testimonies and the joys that the young people put in there, it was a real beacon to me. And my vision is that if we could do that, the school could do that during Black History Month, there's certainly opportunity for us to think about how we could improve that and use it with the communities as well. And I'm hoping the West Midlands team will come on board with some ideas and thoughts about that to show some collaborative working, so we could actually have materials and resources together to support young people.
Thank you, Neil. I'm sure they will. Moving on to a partnership, which you've already touched on, the West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative exists to support dioceses in turning racial justice commitments into practice. Partnership matters because this work cannot sit with one person or one role. It needs shared accountability. So I wanted to ask, where have West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative and the Diocese of Coventry already seen momentum, and what joint milestones would you like to be celebrated by South Asian Heritage Month next year?
I mean, one of the key things that I've looked at working with the West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative is look at ways in which we could promote the microgrant scheme. And those are given a scheme where money is offered to support communities and churches to improve racial justice. And within Coventry Diocese, we've been able to promote that within our given churches. And some of the kind of themes we've looked at is a World Celebration Day, which one church did, to bring the community together with food and crafts and games for young people as well on the day. There's a mental health support group that's running as a result, or certainly being supported by the grant as well. We had a school that took part in Show Racism the Red Card event as well. And then we've also got a church which is being supported with ESOL classes and in intercultural worship as well. So there's an abundance of God's grace in what's being offered through those microgrants. And I think once we've got the Race Equality Advisory Group up and running, and we gather some ideas about how we want to support communities, certainly with the South Asian communities, I'm hopeful that we can access those monies to build projects and to build on a legacy for the future as well.
Okay, thank you, Neil. And our last question is about hope on the horizon, and listeners will want to leave with something they can do, and South Asian Heritage Month can celebrate heritage, but it can also become a moment of commitment to show up, learn, resource, participate, and keep racial justice moving after July. So my final question is, which forthcoming event or program best embodies the theme of unity in diversity while advancing the From Lament to Action agenda in Coventry, and how can congregations or individuals lend their support?
So I'll go back to my earlier point, which is the South Asian History Month Christian celebratory event being held at Coventry Cathedral on Saturday, July the 25th from 1 o'clock till 3 p.m. And what we'll be looking to do during that service is to have a number of worship songs in an intercultural manner, whereby they be sung in Urdu or Punjabi, but elements of them will be also sung in English. So that's going to be quite an exciting style of worship for us. We've got Bishop Sophie, who's going to be doing the keynote speech from Coventry's Diocese, and we're going to have a number of people reading poetry and some people talking about their faith journey from particular backgrounds as well. So that's a key event for ourselves, and certainly for myself, because I'm quite familiar with promoting Racial Justice Sunday and Black History Month, but I was keen to promote South Asian History Month this year, and I'm delighted that the Cathedral are working with myself to promote that. And there will be an abundance of food afterwards as well, which is always a winner. So there'll be food and live music being played whilst we gather for conversations and fellowships as well. I think one of the things, Kevin, that comes to my mind when we're looking at how we can move forward from South Asian History Month is to recognise that people in various parts of the world hold on very strongly to Christian faith, and churches have been built in areas of India quite often against a lot of local protests and the resentment from people. And in some cases, people have been faced with brutality. But the legacy there is that they've kept their faith and they've kept their worship places open and up and running. And I think that's a real testimony, really. Sometimes we may not always recognise the hardship that people have in Asian countries and indeed other countries where they are trying to hold on to their faith as a minority. And what we need to do is celebrate that victory, because it's by God's grace that people are able to continue to worship and make more disciples, but also keep them in our prayers in terms of the challenges they face on a daily basis. And what we need to do is to make sure that we welcome people, as I've mentioned earlier, but also look at involving people in our churches, maybe with worship songs, maybe have the gospel read in a different language, and make people aware that we recognise the church as being a global church of many voices and of every tribe and every nation. And it's those things there that will help people to feel that they are very much part of the church community and working towards God's goal in the future. And one final point I would like to say just on this question is that people need to recognise that we do have our differences, but there's also a beauty in that where we can celebrate that difference. And that can be done through food, through cultural dress, through recognising the gifts that God's given us all. And that is something that we can build on and move forward in creating a more unified and unity in our churches.
Thank you, Neil. And thanks for joining us today and for sharing your reflections on South Asian Heritage Month, the work you're doing in Coventry, racial justice, and all that you're doing in terms of the From Lament to Action agenda. And to our listeners, you've been listening to Seasons of Justice from the West Midlands Racial Justice Initiative. And join us again next time when we tackle another topic on racial justice in the Church of England. Goodbye.